on Mount Kenya politics, because there seems to be a split in the mountain. Just yesterday, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua mentioned that there are State House individuals from State House under President William Ruto that are keen on dividing the Mount Kenya region. We'll have his words play just a little bit later on. This he spoke as he was touring the larger Rift Valley region as President William Ruto was in the United States. But before we play those bites, we just want to listen in to the Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni on his views around the Haki Coalition and equally the political musical chairs that seems to be happening within the Mount Kenya region. Let's listen in.
Well, thank you very much, Jesse. We are now joined by the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, to pick his mind about some of the political activities that have been happening in the past 1 week. I remember they had a Limuru 3 that has so far created a lot of action and reaction from the Mount Kenya region, with Rigiji, or the Rigathi Gachagua, the Deputy President, now under fire for the one man, one vote, one shilling debate, among other issues. Thank you so much, SG, for your time. Just quickly, from that Mount Kenya meeting, that the Limuru 3 meeting that you had, you agreed that the former president, the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, is going to be the leader of the Haki Coalition. Did he accept the job?
One is that we did not have him as the leader of Haki Coalition, but he will be above all of us, those of us who are in active politics, those of us who believe in the cultural formations of our community. So we agreed two main things that involve the former president. One is that we in Mount Kenya region have agreed to come under an umbrella, kind of an umbrella. All the political parties will be under an umbrella. We are not going to dismantle any political party. Every political party will have its own activities, but it will be under an umbrella. And above that umbrella will be former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Okay. The other thing that we agreed is that there is the issue, there's been a lot of debate about Mudhegi. And Mudhegi is symbolic as to who is it that we can refer to, we can rely upon guidance, we can call upon to bring the community together in terms of need. And again, we all agreed that it is best with the former president, now that he is not in active politics, and he is a unifying force, and he's also a person who can help us build bridges with other communities and even with other countries.
Okay.
Yes.
You're saying he's not actively in politics, but this is a move that will bring him back to be active in politics?
No. You see, we must be respectful of people and even their constitutional mandate. He has every right to be in any association that we want. What we are looking for is a center that can bring us together. Then he will leave us to sort out the issue of our political competition among ourselves. But he should be able to call us together when he thinks that we are going astray, like it is now the case. We are splintered in all over, and to the joy of some people. But we want to be together as a community. We want the unity in the community, because together we will achieve more. Mm-hmm. When we are splintered the way we are, we achieve very little. And we also lose out in many, many ways. Okay. So he is the one who is a unifying force, not just within the Mount Kenya region, but he's actually, truth be told, he is a unifier even across the country.
Okay, SG, you're saying he has a right to belong to a political affiliation or anything like that, but the Presidential Retirement Benefits Act says that he needs to leave active politics after 6 months after retirement for him to get the benefits. Don't you think he's having his cake and eating it at the same time?
The Constitution does not require that. That is an unconstitutional provision in that act. And you'll also notice that he himself never called upon Kibaki to move away from politics, nor did he tell Moi to desist from being in politics. So we cannot afford this double standard.
Okay. So has he accepted the role of being the leader of Haki?
We will now go as a group of those people who organized the Limuru 3, and we'll go to him and present our resolutions to him.
Okay. Let's talk about Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, another leader from the Mount Kenya region. There were concerns and questions whether he sponsored that Limuru 3 meeting.
Rigathi was very desirous, if I can use that word, kind of word, to come to Limuru 3. just like Moses Kuria and all these other people, even in UDA, they all wanted to come to Limuru 3 for the reason that Limuru 3 was a very rare opportunity that we created for the people from the mountain to speak out. An opportunity that has not been afforded to them since we voted. And you can actually see that we actually now on one note. We all are speaking from the same, we are reading from the same page. And being a politician, he could tell, because you see, we went through a very bad phase of lying before and after. And they always knew that when people will eventually be given an opportunity to speak out, they themselves will speak out. Remember, this was, unlike the other Limurus, this was a Limuru 3 organized by Lily. We were there, yes, giving guidance, myself, mother, and others, but it was really a people movement. The people who came there came of their own account. Walikuwa jana nimepigiwa na wengine kutoka Nyandarua. We know we closed our businesses. We sat there listening, and we know there is hope for this community.
So did he sponsor or not?
No, he didn't. He didn't. Even now, I could tell you that I'm struggling with some of the bills we incurred. Because it was really, we were fundraising from people who can give us 5,000, 10,000. They never sponsored, and we were not interested in their sponsoring.
Okay. So after that meeting, he has been under fire for so many reasons. And yesterday, when he was in Wasingishu, he said that there are people from Rift Valley who are close to the president who are creating these problems for him. What's your reaction to that?
Under fire unnecessarily. If he thinks, he sees that what we have always said, the principle of one man, one vote, one hearing, is a principle that helps the whole country because it is not a community principle. If he sees that it's a principle that he can push and people wants to fire him for that, I do not understand where they are coming from. But I think he's also trying to create some space for himself, which is normal in politics. Kama umefinywa sana, si lazima ucheze dance kidogo.
Yeah. So nani wanamfinya?
I think you can actually see there is a clear policy being introduced in our legion of divide and rule. And we also saw it done. That time, maybe in the 60s, it was done by Kenyatta himself. But it is something that you'll always see happening. What is happening now? Within the mountain, William is keen on creating other centers. He speaks on Didi Nyoro, he speaks on Kijori, he speaks on Ichungwa. I am told he's heading to pick on Susan. He has picked on Waigoro. All these are centers supposed to give to check. One, Rigadi, Maligiji. And two, also to ensure that we, as a legion, are unable to vote as a bloc come 2027. Okay. Something that fell flat on its face at Limuru 3.
Okay. So what would be your advice to Rigathi Gachagua? Should he stay on and fight off those men in the president's corner who are trying to influence and change the challenge him? What would be your advice to him?
Should he chicken out? Apigane kama mwanaume. Pabane huko. Yeah, hiyo ni kazi yake. Hiyo ni kiti yake airide. Akinyang'anywa hatapata bahati nyingine kama hiyo ya kuishukua. Apabane akiwa huko. It's nothing unusual. What they must stop, saying, because it is inaccurate, to try and say that he is being pushed out, just like William was pushed out by Uhuru. That is, they cannot continue on the same platform of lies. Let them face issues as they come.
Will Mount Kenya region have a presidential candidate in 2027?
It's too early.
Okay. And lastly, about the president's trip to the US, it was historic. He's come with a bag of so many goodies, but at a cost, of course. What would be your comment about that trip?
One, it was a very wasteful trip. Hiring a jet at 200 million shillings so that you can go with a luxury, with a bathroom, and I am told a master bedroom, and I don't know who else was supposed to be inside there. That is really the wastage that we've been talking about in this country. Remember, this is not the first time a president is going to the US. Kibaki went in the early 2000s. He was hosted by, I think, I don't know whether it was Bush, yes. And we saw all that is being done. But he went with a commercial flight. Uhuru was in the US the other day when he was a president. Went with a commercial KQ. He flew from Nairobi directly, even promoting KQ airline. So that is the one thing that tells you that these guys are clueless as to what they want to do in the country. They have come to Prada just to eat, skin, peel it off as much as they can. Two is that I felt a little, when you start going to sit at Kitty Biden and you think that is an achievement for us as a country, honestly, it was really bad. Three, this issue of being termed as now a non-NATO ally, we need to really understand what it means to our non-aligned political position that we have enjoyed since 1963. What have we exposed ourselves to? Because we are now opening our air bases or our military installations or our space for military activity from the US, one way or another. I'm sure you'll get the details. But what does it expose ourselves to? How does that help us moving forward? I see it as just benefiting the Americans, but overexposing us at our level. So we are clearly being used, if you ask me. And finally, the Mombasa-Nairobi highway or expressway is not a new thing. The Americans discussed the same project with Kibaki and Kalonzo. And when it was being done from here, from the airport all the way to Westlands, they came up with a very ridiculous requirement that all the properties near the highway, including your Standard Group building, they had to be brought down. And Kibaki asked, how? These guys don't want to fund this project. They are looking for excuses. And eventually, they didn't. Now we have the expressway from here. We also did a bit of improving of the highway from Mombasa. So I am not sure that he is not being treated for another, wild goose chase.
Okay. You talked about the jet, the presidential jet, and it has caused a lot of concerns. But the president has to travel in style, to travel as a president.
A hustler? Mtu wa kuuza kuku. Why are you desirous of the unnecessary travel? I mean, we have our Fokker, our jet, and at the very least, what he should have done is to fly with it to Dubai. Then he can take a commercial airline. You have saved us a lot of money. If we continue this way, remember, he is doing 3 trips a month since he took power. 3 foreign trips every month since he took power. How much money are we using for just this? And then with huge teams.
Okay, that's the conversation with my colleague Emmanuel To, which he had with Jeremiah Kioni, the Secretary General of Jubilee Party, and he plays a big stake in Haki coalition that was formed after Limuru 3. So he was just being put to task to explain whether Uhuru Kenyatta is the designated leader, whether he truly accepted to be, and equally issues around Ruto's state visit. But this definitely points focus on Mount Kenya region as we know it. A lot has been happening in the last few days in terms of reports perhaps hinting at Deputy President Gachagua being a man under fire, and the latest pronouncements by the Deputy President, which for the first time he opened up about the tribulations in the Kenya Kwanza regime, where he spoke just yesterday in President Ruto's home county of Uasin Gishu, where the second in command went bare knuckle on Ruto's allies, accusing them of being disrespectful towards him. Let's listen in.
Kidogo. Musijaribu kutupangia siasa ya Mlima Kenya na kutupangia uongozi wa Mlima Kenya. Nyinyi mupange siasa yenu na uongozi wenu. Siku Rais William Ruto atastaafu after 10 years. Sisi hatutaingilia vile mnataka kupanga. Nyinyi mtapanga wenyewe. Siasa huko kwetu wa mwezani nayo ni ngumu sana. Huko ya mlima ni ngumu sana. As leaders here are few, and there are few people who have proximity to the president. Wamefura, wamekuwa na kiburi mingi. Wanafikiria ati sasa wamefika, wanaweza kuja mlima ati wapange viongozi ya mlima. Sisi hatuwezi panga viongozi ya bonde la ufa. Mada kwa umesema ati pale mlima ati hao viongozi ati wawache ni hao watu hawana shida. Pale mlima ni pahali mzuri sana. Sisi ni wangwana. Na mnajua. Tulisema William Ruto tutamunga yeye mkono. Wengine mlikuwa hamuamini. Tulimuunga hatu kumuunga. We are honest, straightforward people. The only thing we hate is betrayal. That we hate. Sisi ni marafiki wazuri. Na pale kwa mlima nikiongoza, tunamuunga Rais William Ruto mkono 100%. Na sisi tuko na deni yake ya 10 years. Na sisi ni watu ya kulipa deni. And we are working well with the president. Mimi nikiwa msaidizi wake amenipatia kazi mingi. Kazi ya kahawa mimi nasukuma, kazi ya majani chai nasukuma, kazi ya pombe mimi nasukuma. Rigathi Gachagua, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya.
Okay, we had to cut short those bites, but we got the gist of the message from the Deputy President. There are individuals who are trying to tamper with the succession plan within Mount Kenya region. Now, Zach, we have to start with you on this, because a lot is happening within the mountain, and we're trying to understand what it will mean for this region going forward, especially for the second-in-command Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who seems to allude to individuals within power who might be targeting his seat na bado ameikalia. Yes. So is it an issue of young versus old tax? What exactly is happening? Because it brings deja vu of Kieleweke versus Tanga and how the rain started beating the Uhuru Ruto duo. From your analysis, what's going on in the mountain?
You have to understand, and this is important for Kenyans listening to us. You have to understand that the Deputy President sees an enemy in every bush, whether the enemy existed or not. And where the enemy does not exist, he has to create one, so that he's constantly in war mode. So it is better that there is an enemy, so that he can fight him. If there is no enemy, then he will gallivant around the bush until the bush is obliterated.
So this is strategy, simple.
It is what he is. It is how he has survived in politics. It is the politics that have made him. It is what he knows better. And let me put it this way. Mount Kenya people who voted for Ruto, I'll say this. Mount Kenya people who voted for Ruto, in the overwhelming numbers that they did, were voting for Ruto because of Ruto. They were not voting for Ruto because of Gachagua. Indeed, the leaders in Mount Kenya who are vouching for Ruto, I was not one of them, and luckily I may never be. Those who are vouching for Ruto were saying that they wanted Kindiki as the vice, or rather the running mate who would become the deputy president. So they went into a vote and affirmed, indeed by a dint of voting, that they wanted Professor Abraham, son of Kindiki. That's the man they wanted as the assistant to their friend, their new kingpin, William Samoei Ruto. But for some reason, which my brother here has always spoken to, Mark, before, he picked a man he could always control, a man he picked from nowhere so that he can always remind him, remember, were it not for me, remember, you had been rejected, remember, I made you. When they hated you, I loved you. A man he could always manipulate to the last juice of his bones. So Mount Kenya politics right now seems to have taken a shape that he seems to be under threat from the younger people who are supporting the erstwhile nemesis, the Kiharo member of parliament, Samson Nyoro, Samson Ndindi Nyoro. Yes. Samson Ndindi Nyoro indeed brought together MPs someday and came and said, in 2027, we will support William Ruto. The same people who supported Ruto. In 2027, we will support William Ruto, but we will ask him to change his deputy. And we will give him a younger, agile, focused, and more amiable, media face-looking people, like Samson Ndindi Nyoro. That was the beginning of the rains. And my brother, when it rains, it pours. It pours. And this is what this gentleman has been facing. William Ruto himself, the president, came to Embu and said that we will have a policy within UDA that when a man is a candidate, the woman is a running mate. Again, threw a spanner and made the bad things worse. So from all the corners, the deputy president seemed besieged and he's under home attack. His enemies are not outside there. The enemies of deputy president are within the government. And that's why yesterday he went straight on to face his enemies inside. His enemies are not Zaki Kinuthia, not Mother Karua.
Yes.
His enemies are not even the man you just interviewed here, the Secretary General for Jubilee. Those people outside the government like us are not the enemy to him. The enemies are within the government. And these enemies, again, are not coming outside Mount Kenya. They are coming from Mount Kenya because he's been told, if you are not the running mate choice for Ruto, Samson Didinyoro will, Anne Waiguru may, Kindiki may. And Kindiki is just a heartbeat away from the deputy presidency because being a strong cabinet secretary in charge of security, he could easily come in. What about the face? He has the face and the demeanor and the character and the amiability of occupying the office that Gachagua has as well made very bad attacks towards the office by saying he's a shareholder.
So
how do you say a government is a shareholder and expect friends within the same government? So the people who are undermining him in Mount Kenya are people within Mount Kenya. It is important for people to know that. But who are backing them? They are being backed by people he has mentioned here. That there are people close to president who seem to be giving Didi Nyoro choppers that are owned by the president, who seems to be giving him money to go across the country. The guy has gone to 38 counties to date, giving money to Harambes, the same style that the president used to endear himself to the people. But the deputy president only seemed to be cleared to go to Uasin Gishu and Nyeri. If he is not in Nyeri, he is in Uasin Gishu. If he is not in Uasin Gishu, he is in Laikipia. He is tethered in a certain space, while his nemesis are catapulted outside.
Interesting. Then tell me this, Zach, and just briefly, why the sudden push to reconcile with former President Uhuru Kenyatta? Is there a hidden hand
let me
by
straight
Kenyatta
on. Let me answer you, Rogers. He's fighting his boss.
So he's using Kenyatta to spite Ruto?
He is fighting Ruto. And he knows it because Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be called by deputy president to come. It is the deputy president who should go to the president, former president, a retired president. Same as Kibaki used to do. Kibaki would go to Moi in his retired home. Uhuru would go to Moi and would go to Kibaki to pay homage and to seek counsel of important issues of the state. No president, leave alone deputies, no president ever summoned a retired head of state to come and sit together. So that so any attempt to reconcile with Mama Ngina, to reconcile with Uhuru Kenyatta, to reconcile with us who are opposing them, is an attempt to spite none else but the President of the Republic, who is his boss.
Okay, so will the center hold Bichachi? Because we've been here, we've talked about this in remembrance of what played out in the Uhuru Ruto administration. What's your take on whatever's happening in the mountain? From the mantra that is currently being led by the deputy president, 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, to the regional musical chairs that seems to be, playing out within the mountain. Briefly, your analysis.
Your question is quite pregnant because it addresses two key issues. Number one, Zaki Nuthia has failed to mention that the biggest issue for the mountain is that they're closing rank. The mountain is coming together. It is speaking. And I'm not just talking about the Limuru 3 conversation. I'm talking about generally the mountain is looking at itself and asking itself critical questions.
That's true. That's true.
Now, those critical questions just happen to coincide with Rigathi Gachagua's change of mind and his change of direction. So these two things are happening at the same time, but they're not related. Coincidence is not causation in this particular case. Now, as the mountain is having the conversation, we need to understand that the kingpin from 2022 of the mountain is William Samoei Arap Ruto.
That's right.
That's the kingpin. That's who they voted for.
Yeah.
That's who they woke up early and said,
Yes.
But Gachagua looked for votes.
Just
why are you taking from his plate?
I'm not saying he did not look for votes.
Yes.
Martha Karua also looked for votes,
Which
but everyone voted for Raila.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Okay.
Okay? Now, Rigathi Gachagua finds himself in a high office without a high base. Okay? Now remember, Uhuru Kenyatta, high office, high base. William Samoei Ruto, high office, high base. Rigathi Gachagua finds himself in an office without a base. So whether it is external attacks or his own internal conviction, he is politically aware enough that he needs a base. Now, if there are two bases in the mountain, then one base is definitely with Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and the other base is definitely with Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yes.
So he is looking for something in the mountain, which come 2026, 2027, when running mates are being declared, he can say, here is my chunk of the vote. So it is politics par excellence, because he knows that come 2027, if Ndidi Nyoro, Anne Waiguru, and other retiring governors begin to push for that position, what is to stop the president from saying, I would rather have this person? So on the part of Rigathi Gachagua, even before he goes into other places, he really needs to establish himself as a politician of note and relevance, and most importantly, of importance to his boss, William Samoei Arap Ruto. Now, the one man, one shilling, one vote is just simply a very nice moniker to attract Central Kenya. Because that issue of economics and politics is important to Central Kenya. And they're not galvanizing now, they're not coming together for 2027.
All right.
They're coming together to make sure their politics and the currency is favorable to the mountain.
Absolutely.
Alutalala, from outside looking in, how do you view this?
Thank you, Rogers. You see, the problem with us as a nation is that we have refused to accept that we are not a nation. We are a conglomeration of tribes. And every time we gather to do elections, it is tribes electing their own, eventually converging on the national table.
That's true.
And when the division of the spoils appears not to be sufficient to the shareholders, as they call themselves, then rumbles begin. I was particularly disappointed by His Excellency, the Deputy President, in his first days in office, when he failed to transit from a Gikuyu leader to the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. When you tell people who did not vote for you that you did not vote for me and now I'm in the office, this government belongs to shareholders, it does not belong to you, where do you want the Abaluya to go? Where do you want the Luo to go? And therefore the first national test that His Excellency, the Deputy President Gachagua was given, he flopped. Number two, the one man, one vote, one shilling is a betrayal of what we have always called nationhood. I heard some people argue that Nyeri gives more tax than Turkana, than Tana River. And yes, that might be so. But I've invited them to go to the books of history and read about Tom Joseph Mboya and his paper on African socialism and its application to Kenya today. And it was a deliberate government decision to use government resources then, not Nyeri resources, to develop those areas which needed less capitalization so that they could then be able to sustain the nation even as the other areas would come up. 60 years down the road, when you say that you're paying more taxes, you're forgetting that you're paying more taxes because you're facilitated by the state's taxes. And therefore, I have always been a firm believer that the best way we can resolve this shareholding problem, and now what Mark is saying that the mountain is speaking, it is basically we need to agree and talk about us as a tribe. Let's all meet on one table as a Baluya, and let's ask what is the need for us as a Baluya. What is the need for the Agikuyu? Because that is what Honorable Gachagua is talking about. Honorable Gachagua is saying the Agikuyu are more, they give more taxes, therefore they should get more jobs. And thus the Balio should say, okay, you say we are scattered brains, we don't vote well, but even if there is only one leg, where is that leg for us as the Baluya?
All right.
We should not be ashamed to ask what is for us. Finally, what is happening now is just a depiction of whom His Excellency Dr. William Arap Ruto is. He's a forward thinker and a forward planner. His words are a bit harsh, but there's a bit of a sense where you get that the president is already focused on the next 2 elections.
Yeah.
And clearly the deputy president seems to be falling out of the matrix. If you took the deputy president today and subjected him to a national vote, he will fail flank because...
Don't even go there. He will not even fail. He will not feature.
Okay.
Why is it so? Because as far as the Abalu are concerned, Gachagua belongs to the Agikuyu and talks only about the Agikuyu. As far as the Luo are concerned, so it is. As far as the Turkana is, so it is.
Okay.
Forget about Tana River. Tana River is even worse. And so, Rogers, the biggest problem we have in this country is that we lie to ourselves that there is Kenya. There is no Kenya. There are 44 tribes. Let's talk about the tribes. What is it they are contributing to the national cake? How did they begin to contribute more than others? And how can this national cake be more equitable to everybody else? That way, this government would be safe into 2027. Without that, what is happening now, the deputy president feels that he brought in 3 million, and the governor of Nyeri speaks it very vividly.
Very raw.
Very raw.
Yeah.
With respect, very shamelessly. That they brought in 3 million votes, the rest did not bring. So the deputy president expected it will be 50-50. As Mark says, yes, he's the deputy president, but the foundation is not solid.
Okay.
So there is no 50-50.
All right.
Wanaona mfupa wapelekwa Nyeri,
Bas.
manofu yaenda kwengine. Ndivyo vita vilivyoko sasa katika serikali hii.
As Zach said, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let me just sample a few comments on social media, and perhaps to toot our own horn. It seems the president is reacting to the things we've said here, because he's just tweeted at around 12:19. That's today, in terms of the hustler jet and the controversy around the costs.
The president.
He said, fellow Kenyans, yes, that's President William Ruto, I have noted concerns on my mode of transport to the US as a responsible steward of public resources, and in keeping with my determination for us to live within our means, and that I should lead from the front in so doing. The cost of that jet was less than traveling on KQ. So I think that story by Emmanuel Toh seemed to have ruffled a lot of feathers, and the president is putting a stop to that in terms of the cost vis-a-vis the return on investment. As we finalize, around 30 seconds to 1 minute as we finalize, because we have to hear your final thoughts. But even as we do so, I can see some tweets on X hinting towards a 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. Zach, I'd like you to speak on that, because the deputy president seems to be leading for the forefront right now. But earlier on, they shot down BBI in totality, and yet that was a major component within the BBI. Why the change of tune? Why the change of narrative right now? Yeah, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Briefly.
I want to associate myself with his comment, last comment, which is very important for Kenyans to understand.
Briefly, yes.
The Minofu Mifupa analogy he has spent. Very nice. Deputy President Gachagua is only making noise because he's out of the kitchen. And that is why he's using things that would irritate his boss, so that he's called. The day Gachagua is returned to the table where the cake can be seen, and he can look at the corner, he will keep quiet. Take it or leave it, he will keep quiet. And the cake we are talking about here is not the cake for Mount Kenya. Neither is it the cake for the country. It is a cake for his own consumption as cronies. The day they return to where tenders are divided, where employments are given, where ambassadors are deployed, he will come back to his element of shareholding. Finally, Mount Kenya is of the opinion that it is important to apply equity in resource allocation. Equity, not equality. Equity. 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling will go to where majority of people live, including Bungoma, Kakamega, Mombasa, And then regions that do not benefit out of that formula have equalization fund. It is all fair.
Well
People
noted.
should not even cry.
Our time
And
is out.
thank you for this
Bichachi,
opportunity.
Briefly, 30 seconds.
I think just as the mountain is regrouping, I would like to associate myself with the words of Dr. Lutalala. Kenya needs to regroup. We really need to have a national conversation and agree about where we are going. Because as a country, I took a walk the other day. The amount of sadness and pain in this country is worrying. This country needs a chance to sit with itself and agree where we are going, especially given Raila is going. There's a new wave of leaders coming in. What do we want? What do the next 30 years mean?
Yeah.
Well
Good conversation.
Thank you. Personally, I just want to thank His Excellency the President for what he has brought home. But in the same vein, I appeal to him that just like we have had a lot of resources in this country and they have fallen through the cracks, that the task he has is how to harness what he has brought home into the full realization that benefits all of us equally and equitably, as Mwami Kinuda said. But finally, that the president should be courageous enough to lead a tribal conversation that will talk about the Kalenjin, the Gikuyu, the Abaluya, the 44 tribes of this country, including Asians, without hiding under this shade known as Kenya. Because Kenya is a lie. A tribe is the truth. We are tribal, let's talk tribes.
Okay.
Kenya is a construction of the white man.
Interesting. That's his final comment. Asanteni sana, gentlemen and lady in absentia. We were joined by Dr. Josephine Ojambo a little bit earlier on. Equally joined by Dr. Alutalala Mukwana. Asante sana for your time. He's an advocate of the High Court. Zach Kinuthia, former CAS. Asante sana for your time. And equally Mark Bichachi, a communication strategist. It was a pleasure to have you with us. To all our followers on X, we've seen your tweets. Apologies, weren't able to get the live call-ins and sample some of the tweets, but going forward we will do so because we cherish your input right here on Inside Politics. I'm Jesse Rogers. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Have yourself a fantastic week.